doing something on Wildman. Right as this thought hits me, I hear something big crashing through the leaves. And what busts out in front of me, a little bit higher than eye level, but I could have probably reached out and touched it, is a barred owl, not a barn owl, so a different kind of owl. A
Right.
barred owl busts through the leaves, broad daylight, right in front of me, and flies down the trail in the direction I'm going. I'm like, my goodness, like this owl stuff is real, right? So it's
Uh-huh.
like right as soon as I had that thought, wait, no, Merlin is a wild man. Boom, here comes this owl. So this series of owl events that sort of followed me after reading the messengers.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. Well, I think so anyways.
Yeah, I mean it's for me, there's meaning there, there's synchronicity there.
Mhm.
I think some people maybe go, but for me it's hard to separate the meanings out of this stuff, and see them as mere coincidences. It's too much.
Oh, I agree. When I first got with my now husband, Artemeus, um, we we had this strange event where like a month or so after we moved in together, we just woke up one day and I don't remember exactly how it came into conversation, but we just started seeing owl like home decor. And we felt so inexplicably both drawn to collect this stuff that we just started to collect it. And now our home is filled with owl decor. Is kind of our thing. But neither one of us know exactly when or why or how this occurred. We just both started up one day like, "Oh, I see an owl piece of decoration. I really like that. Do you like it?" "Yeah, it's got some character to it." "All right, he's coming home with us."
Mhm.
And 2, I talked about this on my channel. I know that you're a really busy guy, so I certainly don't expect you to watch it. But, I did an interview with the hubby about his experiences with me since getting with me about contagious paranormal activity, because 'cause he'd never had anything like this happen before getting with me, so we call it paranormal ants. We say that he caught my paranormal ants.
As
Uh,
Chad has said many times, he's like, before meeting you, Tim, this wasn't part of my life, and now it's constantly in my life. So yeah,
uh-huh,
agreed. Yeah.
yep, yep. So we were going through bins and boxes earlier, we're getting ready to move in the spring, and we were going through all of our trees. So I'm sure you can see a few behind me.
Hmm.
We love the northern forests, and so our house is decorated in that way. We keep faux pine trees up year round. And the flocked one, we don't keep that one up year round. It's just our extra special Christmas one. But when we were going through, we were looking at all the ornaments. We were packing things up in general from the other trees. And I don't have him on me right now, but if you go on to the video that I do with Mike Cleland or the interview with my hubby, you'll see we whip out this owl ornament. It's made of faux fur, which is very unique. We don't have any others like that. We've never seen anyone else or any other owl like that, and has a very unique face and whatnot. This thing, we are entirely convinced it just appeared on our tree out of nowhere, thin
Huh.
air.
Huh.
And now I sleep with it over my head because I consider it a gift from someone or something,
Hmm.
and it's very special to both of us. But we call it the quantum owlet because we have no explanation for how it got here, no recollection whatsoever, and we've talked about it many times at length, like, "Come on, we had to have bought this, right?" But we've had other interesting activity where objects we've watched objects just appear out of nowhere almost, and I saw recently my cat crawl out of years dried concrete. I kid you not.
Huh.
That was the strangest interaction I've ever had in my life. And so now I do entirely believe that the owlet just popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, you had an Allaport.
Yeah.
When the cat
It,
crawled out of the concrete, did it look like it was wet as it was crawling out, or did it just sort of look like it was phasing out of it?
no, neither. I wanted to say maybe my little owlet, by the way, he's furry and hairy, so I think he's part wild man. Maybe that's the
There you
connection.
go. Yeah, I mean, there's a hearty connection between owls and wild men.
But for my cat, this experience was so bizarre that it's made it into the next book that myself and Tim and our other friends over at Zontar are writing. And um no, I couldn't find her all morning, right? So I go back out onto the back patio, and my husband and I are just sitting there enjoying the morning. And I'm telling him, I cannot find her anywhere. I've searched literally every place in the house that she ever could be. I can't find her. And then we're talking. We haven't seen her for like 4 hours since her breakfast. So I sit down in my little place and I'm settling down, just accepting that maybe she's somewhere that maybe I missed. And I'm talking to him about this, and then off, I want to say about 7 feet or so, and to my slight right, near her favorite sunning spot, there are plants, and the sunlight there is lovely, and she can, creep on the birds and everything. I noticed movement from my slight periphery. And so, of course, I noticed that I'm going to look straight at it. And I looked just in time to see her pulling herself up out of the concrete. The concrete was perfectly fitted all around her body. There was no sign of moisture or anything like that. But it looked as easy to her as though she was just pulling herself up out of well set jello.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's
Wow.
it. It was crazy. It was absolutely the strangest thing I've ever seen or experienced in my life. I've seen some weird stuff. This by far takes the cake.
Huh.
So I watch her using her little paws pull herself up and out. And the concrete didn't move or anything. It just looked like regular concrete, but she was coming out of it. I watched her about half of her body come out of it. And then she just walked over to me like it was nothing. Like she hadn't been missing for like 4 hours, and she didn't just come crawling out of the concrete. So I was absolutely flabbergasted. And I just sat there with my hand over my mouth, and I couldn't say much of anything. I was just a stuttering hot mess. And of course, my husband had been like sitting right beside me, but he had his feet up on a chair. And of course, the back of that chair was blocking where she came out of the concrete. So even if he was looking, he wouldn't have seen it. So I chopped it up to just some kind of weird gift from the universe or something. And then it spun me into an existential rabbit hole. I'm like, is this even my original cat? Who was my
Oh.
cat? What was my cat? Am I the person glitching in and out? So that thing this looks, I don't know. I don't know. Weird, 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 weird.
What kind of cat Narnia was she visiting?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know. I still love whatever version of cat I have now that I showed you earlier. I guess I love her in all of her forms. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I sometimes that's the thing with all of this, and I had to come to terms with this, specifically about Bigfoot, but it applies to all the phenomena, is most likely we're not getting any answers before we go.
Yeah.
And we might not get any answers after we go either. And
Yeah.
that for me was early on when I was interested in this as an adult early on. And I realized that. And I was like, oh, you're not going to solve this. Like, you don't get to solve this.
Mhm.
And it was kind of depressing for me. And I went through like about a month probably of pretty down days, just like because I loved it so much. And I was like, oh, you don't get to solve this. And then at some point, I sort of sat myself down and I said, Do you still like it? I'm like, yeah. So you're still interested in it? Yeah. You said, well, you're just gonna have to accept that you don't. Solutions aren't forthcoming. Answers aren't forthcoming, and you have to live with the mystery.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And that's just the way it is with this stuff. I don't, I'd be happy to be proven wrong. If it's someday somebody figures it out, fine. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I think this has been with us for as long as we've been around. Our
Mhm.
ancestors talked about it. We call it folklore now, but they're talking about the same darn things we're talking about. It's just they had different names for it. And it was there beside them. And, they had ways to deal with it, but they didn't necessarily have any answers. They had theories, but
Uh-huh.
they didn't have any answers. And I think it's probably going to be the same with us. I think, it's part of the human experience. It's part of being here on this planet. But do we get any answers? I don't think so. Not any,
Yeah.
not any, not any real ones, not any provable ones. We can have our theories, we can have our hunches, we can have our ideas, like this works for me, that works for me. But, in the end,
Yeah.
I think we just have to sit with the mystery. I think that's the way it
Yeah.
is.
I am totally with you, brother. I think too that that's what makes the human experience so interesting to me, because there's so much mystery, and maybe it's not like that for other types of people, or when we all go home, wherever, whatever, why ever, whenever that is.
Hmm.
And I have learned to look at all of these things as a fun game. And my new motto is I just love a good mystery.
Hmm.
Don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah. Yeah. So I support and I love the mystery of all of this, because I prefer to dwell in the realm of possibilities. So this all is right up my alley. And
mhm,
although I've had my own personal experiences, I do believe indeed that I have worked with non-human peoples and human peoples who have had all these different types of experiences, and I've had my own. I still say at the end of the day, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know.
mhm.
Maybe all of this is subjective in a certain way. Maybe
Right.
reality isn't what we think of. And so I can't say definitively that I have all the answers. All I can say is that I have seemed to deduce this or that, and it seems to work under these and these and these or these circumstances.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's it. And
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think that's the fairest way to put it. You know, it's a lot of people try to nail me. If I go into like Coast to Coast AM or something, they'll be like, "Well, what is Bigfoot? What do you think?" And I'm always agnostic. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, you've written so many books about it. We mean you don't know? I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Could it be interdimensional? Absolutely, it could be. Sure,
Right.
but I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm pretty sure it's not a natural animal, just from people I've talked to and the research I've done. I would bet money on it not being. I'd bet a lot of money on it not being a natural animal. But
Oh, yeah.
I can't say for sure. I
Uh-huh.
can't. It could be. I doubt it. I extremely doubt it, but it could be.
Mhm.
But yeah, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine with
Yeah.
not knowing, because it's it's
Yeah.
it's fantastic, and it's part of the human experience. It's part of the mystery of life, and I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, it is my dream one day to go on to coast at least once. At least once. And maybe they'll entertain me after after I become a bigger name, if I ever do. But I have noticed that they do seem to desire more like firmer answers. And it's just, how can we give such a serious label to something that is so very ethereal?
Yeah,
We're,
yeah, exactly.
we can't. I don't think that we can.
And
Not go
there were
on.
so few receipts to bring. And
Yeah.
it's like, and that's without being mean to people. That's what
Mhm.
I often kind of say. Well, you kind of have to bring your receipts on that one. If
Mhm.
you're going to tell me whatever, and it's definitely this, and this is all the rules, and I'm not talking about like, there are what I call rules, like as far as gifting and folklore, there are definite rules,
Oh, yeah.
in as much as if you break them, bad things might happen. It's not guaranteed to
Exactly.
happen, but
Hmm.
and this is again laid out in folklore or that our ancestors wrote down many hundreds of years before we ever were on this planet. So I trust that their wisdom in that sense.
Hmm.
But otherwise, like if you come at me and you just tell me like, no, I go back to Bigfoot because it's my favorite, but it's a good example. They live in tribes, and this is how they mate, and they sleep during the day, but they have guardians out to guard them, and they make nests, and they do this. Like, you need to bring receipts on that. Like,
Oh
no,
yeah.
like you can't say all that because we don't
Yeah.
know people. These wood structures I'm absolutely fascinated with that they may or may not build. All we can say is that they turn up in locations where Bigfoot are. We don't know that they build them, but people
Exactly.
assume that they build them. The people will tell me, oh, they're hunting blinds, or they're this or that, or they use them for their children. I'm like, well, how do you know? You don't know. You
Exactly.
don't know. They're
You
mysteries.
know, one of the biggest complaints that I got, and again, I might be crazy, folks, so please probably don't listen to me. But
Please,
when I
probably.
was, yeah, when I was a paranormal investigator and a paranormal counselor, I often would work with lots of non-human people who had serious issues with human people in the area. And again, I might be crazy. So please don't listen to a possibly crazy person. Okay, my butt is covered. I may continue. So the biggest complaints these non-human people would have is that human people are constantly assuming things. You don't know who built that, who threw that. You don't know why something appeared or why it disappeared. And you break your promises. So, and lying. There's a lot of lying that these non human people would complain to me about. And they would say, this is why we hate human beings. This is why we don't want to work with them, because most of them are wild, violent, nasty creatures by our standards. And this is why we have no problem with abducting them, killing them, using them for breeding stock or for eating or parasiting off of their energy or stoking drama and trauma within a lot of human homes and whatnot. And the biggest bit of feedback on that they would give me is when human beings' nature changes, then our attitudes will change towards them. And I find that very interesting because even I hate to say this, but even I myself, I've never gotten any problems from any type of fairies or forest guardians, Bigfoot, anything like that. Every bit of issue I've ever had has come from a human being. And so I understand what they're saying when they say, I'm not going to work with human people because they're not putting out offerings on time. They're not keeping our trade agreement on time. They just assume that they're going to be able to break their promise or lie, walk all over us, tell others that we did something that we didn't, and that we're not going to be upset or take revenge in any way, shape, or form. So, towards the end of my paranormal career on both sides of it, I just wound up telling a lot of my clients I really don't think that working with fairies or any other type of non human people is for you. I don't think that you're able to uphold the type of psychology and the standards that these kinds of people have, and I don't want to see you get hurt and I don't want to see them angry. So I think it's best if maybe you just stop either harassing them or stop trying to invite them into relationship with you because they don't want to be, things like
Similar,
that.
similarly, I often tell people if you can listen to my podcast or someone else's podcast or read people's books or watch YouTube videos on other people's experiences and you can stop there, you're probably going to be a lot happier.
Yeah, yeah.
To stop there and do that because there is there's true weirdness that comes with this stuff.
Mhm,
And it can get scary.
mhm.
And usually that's the human interpretation of things.
Of course.
We talked about that, I think, before we were recording.
We
It's
did, yeah,
it's
before. Mhm.
it's usually the human interpretation. And I've made that mistake myself, as I told you. I've
Yeah.
interpreted things. But it can get weird and it can get scary and it can get eerie and it can get odd and it can get intense.
Hmm.
And if you can, if that's enough for you, listening to other people's experiences, stop there,
Yeah.
because there's it's fraught with potholes. We'll say it best, if not landmines. This path, and
Hmm.
so it's, and you have to keep, like you were saying, you sort of have to keep this positive attitude, and you have to be able to step outside yourself and realize when you're interpreting things the way a human does,
Yeah.
and that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
dealing with things that may or may not be humans. I think most ghosts probably aren't the souls of dead people. I think they're probably something else.
I agree with you, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that said, yeah, it's not for everybody. And I'm not saying that to be an elitist. Um,
No.
I
No.
welcome people to, if they want to experience this stuff, I just tell them to be safe and to be respectful, and
Yes.
like go out of your way to be kind and respectful and gentle with the forest
Yeah.
and so forth,
I
because
agree.
it's just not worth the potential nastiness that may or may not happen, and most often it won't, but it can.
Uh-huh. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the past, whenever I would work with people, the people on the investigations with me and the witnesses on site and stuff, if they were, and this was very rare, if they were respectful, kind, human people, they didn't have any problems.
Hmm.
But I started noticing that the more typically religiously and or politically charged a person was, the more disrespectful and entitled they tended to be, and the more emotionally unhinged, and they were the ones that got almost all of the trouble.
If you come scared, if you come
Hmm.
with fear, if you come with anger, if you come with
Yes.
cockiness, you're going to
Uh-huh.
get a measure of any of that back.
Uh-huh.
And it's a lesson I had to learn, and I had to adjust myself, because we're going out at night into the dark woods, and it can be very scary. And
Please don't do this at home, kids. Please don't do this at home. I don't endorse that.
and we're doing things that, every bit of folklore in the world says don't follow the lights, and what are we doing? We're literally following the lights,
Yeah.
and it gets, you know it gets weird. But I was approaching it like going out expecting the worst, in a sense, going out expecting to be scared, going out expecting, and I had to adjust that. And once I did, and I go out calm, and I'm not saying it still gets scary sometimes, it still gets spooky, but I don't bring that with me. I don't go out there expecting that. And it's really changed the nature of everything, of the encounters and everything else. So that was a lesson learned, and then again, it was from the advice of Brother Richard, my
Hmm.
monk friend from Ireland. So
Oh, Ireland. Oh, that's fascinating, my friend. Ireland. Could have been anywhere in the world, but he's from Ireland. I
oh
like
yeah,
that.
it's a fantastic resource. He's a Capuchin
Oh,
friar from Ireland. He's excellent, well studied on all this, and he's come on my show several times and blows me away every time he's on. I think he's probably the favorite guest we have on there.
oh my. I'm going to have to watch some of those shows now. Or should I say listen?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's well worth it. I mean, he's absolutely fantastic.
Wow. All right. Well, I'm even more interested now that you say he's from Ireland. As far as all of the other topics go that we just covered, being respectful and psychology and trading and relationships and everything, um, it just seems to me that the more selfless, balanced, objective, and non-judgmental a human person is, the easier of a time that they have with non-human people. And I think that there are a lot of lessons to be learned in that, because I don't believe that humanity is quite as separate from non-human people as what they like to typically think. I believe that we're all one big family. I just think that we have different densities and different genetics and different psychologies at times. And even within the human race, there are cluster A, cluster B. They're really healthy, empathetic, beautiful people, and then we've got sociopaths and psychopaths and everything like that. So there's great variety in all types of life, and I hope that over time human people and non-human people can come together more in a healthier and balanced, more loving and accepting way mutually, so that we can make life maybe a little bit more interesting and a little bit more magical. I mean, how cool would it be to maybe have a fairy friend who could manifest something delicious in their hand for you right there, you know?
Right. I mean, these things have always lived beside us. And I love to point out about wild man and Bigfoot. They've always been there. Always. If you go back into medieval times, now it's changed a little bit. If you go back into medieval times, these wild men were like forest wizards.
Yeah.
They were like very wise and magical and so forth. And you go through time and they change a little bit, and you get to the 1800s and these newspaper articles I write about, and they're often, they start to begin, they're still hair covered, but they often appear in like ragged clothes. Sometimes they're carrying like an old rusty musket, but they're still giant hairy things. And then you go up to modern day and they're very wild, like they're very, covered in hair. They're very, very much more wild, much less human like.
Hmm.
So the wild man archetype seems to change. And the opposite of that is the UFO seems to get more sophisticated. If you think about the original airship reports in the 1800s, they were
Yeah.
like Zeppelins before we had them. And then they turned into sort of these Art Deco looking like UFO things. And then, it was always a little bit ahead of our technology. They had the black triangles started appearing before we had stealth fighters.
Hmm.
And now they're like a lot of these like jellyfish or these sort of like plasma like ships and stuff people are seeing. But their
Yeah.
technology always seems to be just ahead of ours. So the UFO gets more advanced, the wild man gets wilder. But I've often thought about how disconnected we are from nature, and how, if we don't want, we don't ever have to be in darkness.
Yeah.
We can leave lights on all the time. We don't ever have to experience darkness. We Most of us, those that can afford heat, depending on where you live, don't have to experience the weather. We can
Hmm.
stay inside.
Yeah.
We don't have to experience the seasons. We
Hmm.
don't need to do that anymore. People are very happy to sit inside and watch TV and do this and do that. And I wonder if by necessity our wild man has gotten wilder as we've gotten more tame. We've become inside people. We're not outside, and the wild man has gotten wilder because of that. I often wonder about that because it's the same archetype. It's the same wild man, and they've always lived next to us. They're always going to live next to us in whatever wilderness is there. But it's changed over time, and I do wonder if it'll continue to change. It probably,
Uh-huh.
this happens over the course of hundreds of years, so I may not see it. But as you said, these things are always with us, and it's a matter of how easily we interact with them. And I think our wild man maybe have gotten wilder because we haven't interacted with it, because we started going inside, and in a sense stop believing, although you don't necessarily need to believe it. It's not Santa Claus, you don't have to believe. Sometimes it'll tap you on the shoulder whether you believe in it or not. But in a sense, we've stopped believing, we've stopped interacting with it, we've stopped dealing with them. And has that driven the wild man to become wilder in a sense? Or
Hmm.
do we need it to be wilder because we don't have that connection with nature that we used to have?
Yeah, who knows, really? It could be a mirror image or it could be something else. I don't really know its relation to the human condition right now, but it is a fascinating mystery,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
you know? Another thing, you're talking about these people or beings being with human people for essentially forever. Are you familiar with any Russian folklore?
A little bit. Yeah, I covered a little bit of that. The I'm trying to remember the name of their wild man. You could summon him with a circle of sticks. I remember I did a little bit about him in my book.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to say that their home guardian is called the domovoi.
Hmm.
And the legend goes that the family elder, when they pass away, becomes the home's domovoi, and the domovoi are considered fairy in Russia. And I find that interesting. There are lots of tales of human people becoming fairies or other types of sometimes wild men, as you say, or others. And one of the core descriptions of a domovoi is that this fairy is a small, hairy person from head to toe.
Hmm.
And so I wonder if that could be kind of related to the wild man archetype, but somewhat humanized, somewhat tamed in a way in order to make it more palatable, perhaps, in a way to the human mind. And then this gets into the sophistication of UFOs and things of that nature. What if human people are more seeing what they want or they need to see in a
Right.
sense
Right.
and taming it? What if it's something completely different?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I truly believe there are times where two people can see something completely different. One of my favorite Bigfoot encounters that was ever on Strange Familiars, the witness named Gage, he saw a creature with two of his friends, two of his childhood friends. They were young kids, like 10, 12 years old. They were walking down a trail, and he remembered it as this. Saw a big white Bigfoot step out of a tree and warned them not to go down the trail any further. He took it as a very positive thing that this
Oh, yeah.
Bigfoot was warning them that there was someone back there that was up to no good, that meant them harm, or maybe a mountain lion or something that they shouldn't go that way. He took it
Yeah.
as a very, very positive, scary, but generally positive. You know, uh, they ran out of the woods, and he said that they called this thing the beast. They didn't even really know about Bigfoot at the time, and they called it the beast for years and years. As he gets older, he gets interested in Bigfoot, and he thinks back to this, and he says, "I want to contact these two kids, these
Hmm.
two other kids." So he tracks them down. The One of the kids had a bad family life. He said had a really rough kind of home life, and he talked to that kid, and he said, "Do you remember seeing that?" And the kid said, "Yeah, I do," and it was pure evil. He said it was
Yeah.
solid black.
Yeah.
Stepped in and out of that tree, and that thing was evil.
Yeah.
The third kid didn't see anything, just ran
Hmm.
away because the other two were running. So here we have three people. One
Hmm.
one sees nothing. One sees a white Bigfoot and takes it as a very positive thing. One sees a
Hmm.
black Bigfoot, takes it as a very negative, evil
Yeah.
thing. They agreed they saw a Bigfoot, but they both saw two different things as far as that goes. When I was speaking about John, who I took to see those lights, when he was reaching out to grab that light, I was about 6 feet away to the side of him. I asked him to describe what he saw. He
Hmm.
said it looked like a golf ball or a ping pong ball, like sized light. Now, what I saw the light, but to me, it looked like a pen light, like a very tiny, just a point of light. Now, I was at a different angle, 6 feet away. Was that, or were we looking at something totally different, like seeing something totally different? Both saw the light. He saw a ping pong ball. I saw a little point of light. So I think sometimes it happens. I think sometimes people see different things. And in the case of those kids seeing the Bigfoot, like, were they bringing their own baggage to it? He said the one kid had a very negative home life. Was he bringing
Yeah.
that baggage to it? I don't know, but I truly believe there's some sort of interaction with us that may, we may see different things.
Yeah. In my own years of experience, um, I did a lot of trauma care and trauma work with families that I was assigned to as a paranormal investigator and paranormal counselor. And every single case where there was uh, negative activity, these people were living what I would call very low vibration lives. There was a lot of abuse, neglect, drugs, alcohol, high religious content, high political content, um, a lot of loneliness, and often like cheating and lying and whatnot. And some of these cases, these non-human people were trying to send messages, make their lives so miserable so they would get help. Some of the cases, they were tired of living with these hot mess human beings, and so they were trying to send messages. This is what they told me. Some of them, and it worked. And then once they got into care, the negative paranormal activity would go down as long as the human people stayed calm and clean, but most human people wouldn't take that advice. And so eventually the non-human people would leave, or they would just continue to ramp up the activity in reflection to what was going on there with the human family. But I had many cases too where there were parasitic type of non-human people who were there just to feed off of the human suffering. And in both sides of these cases, the two extremes, when I would talk to these non-human people, they would say the way to make us go away is for them to raise the vibration. So that's the first part of it. The second part is that when I would go into these places, a lot of the times I would physically be able to see these non-human people, and they would take one form for me, or I should say they would have one form for me. They would have another form that could be caught on camera at times. Sometimes it matched, sometimes it didn't. And then the family clientele would see something usually completely different, but always extremely negative in these cases.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're describing to me lines up perfectly with what I've experienced over the years. And it came to me over that amount of time that these human people are bringing their judgments, their baggage, their expectations, and projecting it onto that non-human person.
Mm-hmm.
So the non-human people, whether parasite or just someone who was caught up there and didn't want to leave because they love the house and they love the vibration and whatnot outside of that family, they would just say that they don't care what the human people thought because the human people are too emotional and ignorant to understand that what they're doing has effect on how they the non-human people are perceived, but that it benefits them either way, so they just don't care. I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. How do you relate that to the humans without offending them? Just out of curiosity.
I don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I would usually just try to work with them and say, okay, this is the gist of what's going on, and here is the recommended care plan that I have
Okay.
for you.
Yeah.
And I would try my best. A lot of the time too, when I first got into this, the non-human people would tell me that the human people that I was involved with, they could not handle the truth. And so I was advised to keep certain parts quiet in order to achieve my goal, their goal, and what was going to be like safe and reasonable for the human family. And this is so-called demons telling me this kind of information. So this is why I've changed a lot over the years. I don't believe in demons anymore as what human beings say that they are, because they've been perfectly fine and reasonable with me the whole way through. I've never had a problem, and they have not lied to me as far as I can tell. So,
Yeah, I mean, I've had people say, do you think Bigfoot is a demon? Do you think
mhm.
this is a demon? Do you think? My answer is generally no. I think if they were demons, they'd be a lot more of a problem. And I think that it's not a very good form for a demon to take. Like if a demon wants to make trouble,
Yeah,
there's other forms they could take to make a lot more trouble than that. And I think they'd be a lot more trouble than they are if they actually were demons. So I think there's a whole ecosystem out there of spirits,
yeah,
good, bad, everything in
yeah,
between.
yeah.
And most of the time when people still, oh, it's a demon, I think, ah,
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Nah, nah. And some of these non-human people, they play into that role because they're getting free resources in return.
Oh yeah.
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 And I've even had so-called parasitic people non-human people apologize to me and say, hey, this is nothing personal. We're literally only here and feeding off of this energy because this family of human beings is providing it free of charge. That's it. The
Interesting.
problem isn't with us, it's with them. And so they would tell me some of the stuff that was going on within the family. And this is why I said I learned to stop telling human people certain things after a while. So there was one case in particular that was almost a deal breaker for me. The mom and the dad were both staunch Catholics, which I don't have any problem with if that's the religion or spirituality that makes sense to someone. I don't have a problem with that. I just personally don't recommend or support religion, but that's just me. And I'm probably crazy, so please don't listen to me. But
I am Catholic, so but I'm not offended. Go ahead.
oh, cool. I do remember you mentioned something about your Mother Mary collection, and I feel bad. I don't want to.
Don't worry about it. You're fine. I feel like if my listeners are watching this or listening to this and I don't mention it, they're gonna be like, well, why didn't he say anything? So I just
Cool.
have to mention it.
Cool. Yeah, because I don't want to offend you. I support you and I love you just how you are.
It's
I just have my own beliefs. That's
I
all.
am yeah no I am not offended in the least, and I I live with an entire family who are not Catholic. I'm the only one here that's Catholic, so
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
that's the way it is.
Oh, I would say, oh yeah, they were a deeply entrenched Catholic family. And I know that Catholicism has certain tenets and whatnot, and I support that. But this family, they were not living up to the doctrine whatsoever. So the mother, I'm not going to give the real names. I usually just call them Karen and Bob when I relate this story. Karen was a secret alcoholic, and she had neglected to tell the church that. So when my investigation group was assigned, and we worked very closely with the Catholic Church, by the way, um, uh, she didn't tell them that. So she didn't tell them about her consistent day drinking. She didn't explain that she was a constant silent DUI type of person, if you catch my drift.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob, the husband, didn't explain that he hates his life, he hates his job, and that he often comes home in a rage and takes it out on his family. Well, the so called demon told me about these details, and I went back and I probably, well, no, given what happened next, it's hard for me to know if I would have been healthier, better, more professional to approach each of them separately. I'll let you be the judge. I essentially outed both of them. I was very young, very innocent, didn't understand human emotional reactivity at that point. So I thought I was in the right. It was myself, and then I think there were four of the other team members there, and then there was Bob and Karen and the teenage kid. And I relayed what I was told by the so-called demon. Karen flipped her lid and she started cursing me out and also called me a demon and making fun of me for how I look because I do have a few odd features. And Bob just had like a strange emotional meltdown. It was half anger, half sorrow. And this poor teenage kid was just standing in the corner, shaking. And the whole team, my whole team, just did not quite know what to do. And we wound up having to leave entirely because Karen was picking up like crucifixes and stuff and throwing them at me. And so on the way out, the so-called demon was like, this is what is really going on here. They are the problem, not me. And this is why I'm here, because they're just giving out all of this energy, and I'm not leaving unless they change. Needless to say, I never went back there. They were put on the blacklist, and the church, the local church, was notified of what was going on, and all ties were cut. So I don't know if anything happened beyond that. I don't know, but it was
Mhm.
one of the worst and most impactful cases of my experience. And excuse me, it's one of the ones that inspired me to quit after a while.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people to be confronted with
Yeah.
whether it's in paranormal or otherwise. In
Yeah.
just daily life, it's hard for them to be confronted with their own weakness and their own failures and so forth. Um, yeah, that's a hard thing. It's a very, very hard thing. So I don't excuse their behavior, but I sort of, you know, can see humans reacting that way.
Mhm.
People
Mhm.
don't like to be told things,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if they're trying to hide it, right? If someone's trying to hide it, they don't like to be called out on stuff at all. So yeah, that's just an unfortunate situation. I think it,
Yeah.
it probably has, other than like you said, they weren't living their faith. Other than that, I think it probably has very little to do with the fact that they were Catholic. They could have been
I
anything. But yeah, yeah, that's a sad situation. I don't know the right way to handle that at all. You know.
yeah. Yeah. And I think I I think that there could be several healthy paths to handle it. I just wasn't prepared. I was like I was 23 at the time,
Yeah,
and
I mean that's the boldness of youth, right? We all did dumb stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm diagnosed as being um extremely neurodivergent, so I don't really understand a lot of the like human emotional content, and I especially didn't understand it back then. So I stepped on a landmine that probably everyone else could have seen coming.
Mhm.
So that was a
Yeah.
a rite of passage for
Yeah, well,
me.
lesson learned. That hopefully
Yeah.
wherever they are, they've found better ways to handle things.
I hope so. But I was told that it had nothing to do with them being necessarily like Catholic, that it's more that a lot of super unhealthy mentally, emotionally, psychologically people and a lot of extreme hypocrites are drawn to strong religions.
Hmm.
And so that's one of the things apparently that certain types of non-human people look for in finding a family to attach to. It could be any religion though.
Yeah,
Christianity,
yeah.
Christianity, Catholicism, Buddhism, um, was it Islamic? It can be any and all. So
hmm Yeah. No, I mean, there's an interesting component of belief with this stuff that
mhm.
I've noticed in abduction accounts,
Mhm.
and in that um I've had my own experiences, which we're getting on 2 hours here, so I won't get
Oh,
into it, but
okay.
another time we can talk another time actually. But
Please.
I can end it. I can end them immediately by saying the Hail Mary. Very interesting.
Mhm.
And people who are Catholic can take that and go, "Oh, see, we're
Yeah, yeah.
right. We're
Mhm.
right." But if you look into it further, Jewish people can end it with Jewish symbols
Exactly.
and prayer, and Buddhist people can end it, and Wiccans can end it. And
Mhm.
what this tells me is that it's not that everybody's right, and blah blah blah, nor that we're all wrong either. It tells me there's a belief component to it, and whatever this is, it either respects belief in some sense, or perhaps it's outside of that, and it knows it can't confirm one way or another what belief is, quote unquote correct. uh Either way, there is a belief component to this, and I find it very interesting, but it doesn't seem to matter too much
Mhm.
um what you believe.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting, very interesting.
What I experienced and what I was told by these non-human people is that it's not at all about any religion and calling up any god or goddess or anything like that. They explained to me that it is literally only about revoking the invitation.
Hmm,
And as long as the person is serious about it, it doesn't matter if they have a symbol or not. It's literally just laying down that boundary seriously.
interesting.
So I had worked a few, I call them exorcism light cases with the Catholic Church. I was doing screening for the Catholic Church along with this paranormal group. And I noticed a strange tie-in between repeated so-called possessions and benefits that people were getting from the Catholic Church and the communities and stuff like that. And what one of these so-called demons told me is that I'm here because this person wants me here. They want to share their body, etc., with me because they are getting benefits. And so they would tell me this person is not doing it on purpose. It is a deep subconscious desire of theirs. And this is why nothing is working to get me to go, because I have the core permission from the possessee, you could say.
Hmm.
And so in these cases, I would wind up referring that person to local psychologists in order to get help for their trauma. Because again, these people were coming from really broken, sad stories and sad homes, and they were surrounded by abusers and enablers. They often had addictions going on as well, and then they had very few, if any, coping mechanisms to deal with what was going on in their lives. And so this so-called possession became a positive point in their life because whenever they would have a flare up, you could say, they were being showered with attention and whatnot. They were getting money and people were baking for them and cooking for them and showering with them with love and care and prayer and attention and whatnot. So yeah, a lot of the time these so-called demons would be honest with me, like, if this person wants it to stop, this is how they can do it, and I know that it's nothing personal, and I'll just move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'll find someone else who wants me at that point.
That's very
But that's
interesting.
been my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I mean, I
Mhm,
could see it. I mean, especially with these repeat cases,
mhm.
and again, I don't speak for the church,
No, 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 not at all.
but yeah, I can see they're definitely getting a lot of attention from
Uh-huh.
and repeated attention.
Mhm.
So yeah, I could see there being a psychological element to that, and it could be a both end thing. It could be
It
that
could.
and some other things. But yeah, I can see that.
It could. And again, my experience is just one in a million. I'm almost certain that there are other types of non-human peoples who maybe do respect religious and spiritual beliefs. I just haven't run into them in the cases that I've done. I'm just relaying what I have learned.
Hmm.
So, and again, I might be nuts. I don't know. I'm just chilling in my pajamas by my Christmas tree. Don't listen to me, probably. That's it.
Don't listen to me, probably. That's
Yeah,
it's like when I get into these debates on Bigfoot, and I usually end them by going, "Oh, whatever, Bigfoot's whatever you want it to be." I'm just
yeah,
leave it at
yeah,
that. It's whatever you want it to be. I'm done with this.
yeah, yeah.
I'm putting that on a t-shirt by the trademark. No one else do that. It's Bigfoot, whatever
Yeah,
you want it to be. That's gonna be my next t-shirt. So.
I agree. Completely agree. You should definitely trademark it. But yeah, and that's exactly what these non-human people told me. They said, I don't care what people think. I'm whatever they want me to be.
Mhm.
And so I've kind of even adopted that myself, in that I say, what age am I? People often ask me my age. I'm like, I'm whatever age you want me to be. Never ask a lady her age, by the way.
With all this gray, I don't have that advantage anymore.
Oh, well, fooled me. I think that you have a beautiful, young, and vibrant energy about you. So I think that the gray is just a badge of honor at this point, my dear.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. So, um, it seems like we have had a wonderful show, and it seems like it is time to go. Unfortunately, time flies quickly when we're having fun. But Tim, would you please tell us where we can find you and what you're going to be up to next?
Sure. Strangefamiliars.com is where you can find my podcast, but there's links there to my books and to my Etsy shop where you can get my artwork and prints of my art and so forth, like that. And then I do a second podcast called The Flowered Path. And that's about saints and Catholic mysticism and things like that. And that's at thefloweredpath.com. And also both podcasts are wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, etc. So they're around.
Excellent. And as always, everyone, I have been Tillie Treadwell. Across every vibration, every dimension, all around the world, and all around time, I wish you a merry morning or a magical midnight.